All right, welcome. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We welcome you to our November school board meeting. I would invite you to join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, our first order of business is to have our new director say her oath of office. So I will welcome Ms. Andrick to the podium.
That'll work better. All right. All right. So you have a copy of this in front of you, and you're just going to repeat after me. I,
Harmony Carson,
thank you, do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the laws thereof,
and the laws thereof,
and the policies of the Sherwood School District.
and the policies of the Sherwood School District.
I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of school board member
discharge the duties of the office of school board member
according to the best of my ability
according to the best of my ability
during the term for which I have been elected.
during the term for which I have been elected.
Congratulations.
Good job. We welcome you officially. All right, before we move on any further in tonight's meeting, we need to amend the agenda to include an action item that was previously missed. Under section 7, item C, I will be sharing with the community and the board the proposed superintendent appointment standards and criteria. While we will engage in discussion at that time, we do need to formally adopt this document before we are able to move forward. Is there a motion to amend this agenda by including an additional action item where this can be discussed and possibly adopted?
Madam Chair, I move that we add an action item D under action items, number 8, to adopt the standards and appointment criteria for the superintendent contract.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 0. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Please make a little note in your agenda. And we will add that on an 8D. Okay, thank you. Now that we've taken care of that small change, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, guys. That's quick. All right, now for the fun part of the evening, spotlight on. I'd like to welcome Miss Marlene Carroll, Miss Katie Voss, and Mrs. Natasha Cohen to the podium.
You guys want to just stand it again? No. You can come too, Haley, if you want. All right. Thank you, Board Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, and board members. Tonight, we're here to share a little bit about Flex and kind of what we've been doing at the middle school and high school this year and last year. So I'm really excited to introduce Natasha Cohen, Katie Voss, and Haley Cohen. They're all here. They've been working on implementing Flex throughout the last 2 years. Last year starting at the high school and this year starting at the middle school, and share a little bit of their story and journey with Flex. They'll talk a little bit about MTSS and the importance of this time, and then some of the experiences that our students are going through right now. So just as a reminder, MTSS is a systematic framework that utilizes evidence-based practices to improve academics, behavior, and mental health for our students. The Flex part of it is really where we do our tier 2 or intervention with our students. We have our tier 1, which all students receive, and then we kind of have some targeted instruction for tier 2. Sometimes that's enrichment, Other times it's intervention. So now I'm going to turn it over to Natasha to share a little bit more and go a little deeper.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Board Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, and board members. So flex time is exactly like it sounds. This time is set aside in our day to extend learning and really meet the needs of all of our students. Flex time provides timely, targeted support for our struggling students. Might want ahead. There we go. Flex provides a timely, targeted support for our struggling students. So for example, if students notice that they're falling behind in school or they're really struggling to gain an understanding of a concept, Flex is a time and an opportunity for them to be able to connect with their teachers. Flex time also offers extension opportunities to enhance learning. So if students are passionate about a certain subject, they can explore in more in-depth. And so Flex is really great for that. Flex increases student engagement, choice, and buy-in into learning and the school day. So we're really excited about this one, and the key word being choice. This is very unique. I think in the state of Oregon, we're one of very few schools that give students the opportunity to choose where they want to go each week, or at least have some choice in their schedule each week, which is really nice. Flex time creates additional time for staff to connect with students and build positive relationships, which is key. We also utilize flex time to enhance peer connections, which is really great. Students get an opportunity to connect with other students that share the same passions or interests. And then lastly, flex time provides equitable access for all students. So in particular, when we're talking about students, this is especially true for our students who are unable to come to school early or able to stay late. This is an opportunity to provide equitable opportunities for all of our students. Okay, so we are very intentional with the planning of flex time within our master schedule. And as Marlene had mentioned, we started this process at the high school. I think it was in February of last year, and we kind of piloted it. And then we began this at the middle school at the start of this year. So we're about 9 to 10 weeks in at the middle school. And we did a lot of work around making sure we set up this process to ensure a smooth rollout. The way that it looks and the way that it works is that Flex is a block of time, and it occurs in the middle school and the high school schedule. It occurs 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's for approximately 30 minutes. So what happens is each Friday, students, and there's 2,800 students between the middle school and high school, log into Synergy, and they sign up for 2 new Flex sessions for the following week. And students can sign up and attend the same Flex for both days, or they can choose 2 different Flex offerings for that week. Teachers can hard request students if they need to see a student. So it's a really simple process. If a student sees that they've been requested, they are kind of locked into that Flex section for that day. And then all of this is tracked within Synergy. And so this is really, really a neat feature because we're able to track student selections as well as the interventions that they've attended. And then attendance is required and is taken. So it's treated just like any other class during the day, during Flex days. It shows up on the student's schedule, they attend, we take attendance. And now I'd like to turn it over to Katie Voss, our associate principal at the high school, to talk about how we've been using Flex time specifically.
Thank you, Tasha. Good evening, Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, school board. I get to talk about the fun stuff that we do during Flex. So every week, just as the students choose what they're going to do, staff have the ability to decide what they're going to offer to meet the needs of students, and it changes every week. Offerings can include academic support, specifically enrichment opportunities. We have line dancing at the high school, chess, knitting, homework help, test preparation. This can be a time specifically to make up labs or activities that were done in class. Our counselors have been meeting systematically with students, like all of their freshmen have been meeting with their counselors recently. We have club meetings that occur during Flex time. We've hosted senior class meetings, whole class meetings in the auditorium during this time. It can be time for extra practice. Most band students have the opportunity to go practice in practice rooms or with ensembles during this time. And we have guest speakers. Sometimes we host college visits and things like that during Flex. So we have a lot of flexibility to offer a variety of interesting things, both for staff and for students. And it's a really, really great way to allow both parties, students and staff, to be creative and enjoy this time to meet their needs. And next, we have a student from the middle school who's going to talk a little bit about her experience with Flex. And then we have some photos of different Flexes to share with you at the end. So I'd like to introduce Haley Cohen.
Hi, I'm Haley and I'm from Sherwood Middle School and I'm in 7th grade and I'm here to talk to you about my experience with Flex so far. I really like Flex because I think it's really cool and I think the students really get a lot of choice and I know that I do and I can really choose where I want to go and what I want to do, which I think is really cool. And I have been able to choose quite a few different types of Flex that I think have all been really cool and I really like all of those so far. One thing that has really stood out so far is when I've been able to do Flex in band, and this has been really cool because we are able to take different types like multiple classes of band and put them in one Flex, which is super awesome because we can do stuff which is opens up new opportunities because we usually don't get to do that. And we can also focus on individual instruments where we have been hard requested for just a specific instrument. Like I play the clarinet, and that overall makes the band a lot better. And I think we all benefit from that. So I think that's really cool too. This example, I've only had to do this once, but I got to make up a science test because I was absent one day and my science teacher was able to hard request me and I thought it was really cool and it was really easy and I was just hard requested and I was able to go and make it up and it was super simple and I didn't have to miss anything or make up anything and I really liked that because that was fun. My last example is in leadership. We have been able to do Flex in leadership and actually a lot just recently because we have our Veterans Day brunch, which is actually tomorrow morning. So we have been setting up for that in Flex this week and in the past weeks. We've been able to get a lot more done because of it and do a lot with that. And I think it's really fun because we can, again, put together like the A and B day classes, which is really cool. And we're able to do a lot more because of it. And just honestly, overall, I think Flex is really cool and it opens up a lot of new opportunities and I really like it so far. I'm looking forward to getting to use it in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Haley. So I'm going to just share some pictures with you. I had the opportunity to go around at the middle school and just kind of pop into classrooms and just kind of look at different ways that teachers are utilizing flex time. I did this at both the middle school and the high school. And so on the left there, dance enrichment. So this is taught by Miss McFarland. She does a dance club, but by offering this during flex time, she's been able to pull in other students that don't normally get the opportunity to be a part of dance. And so that's been a lot of fun and exposing students to new opportunities, trying new things. Knitting club. So we actually have a club that meets and they practice knitting. And so some students have learned to knit this year, which was like, we actually had parents show up at conferences and they were like, oh my gosh, my student knows how to knit. They learned at school. And so that was kind of fun. When we talk about extensions, we're talking about students being able to go above and beyond a little bit more in depth into a subject that they're interested in. And this one I popped into was Spanish bingo. So practicing bingo, but all in Spanish. They weren't speaking any English. It was just all Spanish. And so really getting to extend the learning there. When Haley touched on combined band sections, so she was talking about being able to put multiple sections together and students getting to play that normally don't get to play together. And I know that Casey Crane has commented on this multiple times. He's provided this feedback that it's been really incredible for the band program, especially when they're preparing for concerts and things. Math practice, I popped into a classroom where students were doing math games just to reinforce skills that they were practicing and learning about. And then we actually have 2 chess clubs. And so this was one of them I popped in, and it's really fun to see students competing against each other. Also, the teacher will participate too. So the students will play against the teacher. I popped into an origami. This was an enrichment. So just teaching, this was just something fun, teaching students how to do origami. And then Haley had kind of commented on science lab makeup. And so this was one I had popped in on. So I know this has been instrumental for our science teachers because, as you know, science labs can take up a great deal of time. And so being able to provide that time during the school day for our students to be able to make up that if they've missed it has been really great. And then over at the high school, as Ms. Voss had mentioned, we have been inviting colleges to come onto campus and connect with our students and talk to them about opportunities after they leave high school. We've had multiple college visits. I think we're up to like maybe 7 or 8 now that have come since the start of the year. So I popped in when University of Oregon, when the Ducks were chatting, and we had, a good number of students came in just to learn a little bit more about college. I popped into a bracelet making enrichment. That was really interesting just to see the students learning a new craft. Okay, line dancing is extremely popular at the high school. This is taught by Mr. Pratt, and it fills up so fast. He gets 45 to 50 students every single Tuesday and Thursday. And I popped in. I wish I could show you the video of it. It was incredible. These guys are amazing. And he's right in front and center there in the red shirt, leading the whole group. And it's just such an incredible thing to see the students on their feet dancing together and just having that opportunity to connect and be passionate about something together. Independent band practice. So this is actually not coordinated. This is just letting students come in and independently work on their instruments. This was a lot of fun. It sounds like it's just a crazy mess of instruments, all sorts of horns and things blowing and nothing's in tune. It's all different, but they're all individually practicing on their instruments and just getting that additional time to work. I popped into a rehearsal for an upcoming play that we're doing at the high school. And this was really neat to see some of the cast members be able to specifically work with their director. Our counselors have been meeting with students and they've been hard requesting students for little sessions of like meet your counselor. And then she's actually projecting a slide that talks about tips for success. So things that they can be doing to be successful at the high school. I popped into a math intervention. So all the students here were getting help. Again, this is really great. Flex time is our supplemental support. So an opportunity for students to get that help when they're starting to struggle. We also have games. So again, another opportunity for kids to connect and just something that they're all passionate about and really work on building relationships and that peer connection. And then also Key Club. We have so many clubs at the high school. I want to say 40s, 50s, somewhere in that range. 40 or 50 clubs for students to get involved in, which is really incredible. And so this is one thing that's really neat is that we're providing this opportunity during the school day for kids to be able to attend clubs that they might not otherwise be able to participate in if they were held before school or after school. So, okay. Do you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Thank you for that presentation. This
Yeah.
is really cool. You noted about college visits. That's amazing. Is there also other options like trade professional visits or military visits as well?
Yes. Yeah. So Liz Barrett is in charge of working on identifying various opportunities for students after high school. And so she's starting with the college visits. And I believe in the next month or two, she's moving on to trades and other things. And so she's going to create those opportunities throughout the school year. Yes.
Okay. Very cool.
Mhm.
The hard request, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So let's say there's a hard request for a student, but the student has something else in mind, like they need to work on. How is that worked out?
If the student has picked somewhere else that they want to be?
Well, let's say a teacher has a hard request for a student over one topic and the student, needs to do something else that day, or they are struggling in math and they feel like their time could be better. What trumps what?
Yeah. We're still working out some of that. For the most part, it's worked pretty smoothly, but we do on occasion have some, I would say sometimes when two teachers need to see a student at the same time, or a student feels like they need to be in one place and a teacher needs to see them, like you're mentioning. And so that's why we try and make sure that we have those two opportunities in the week. So if I wasn't able to catch a student on a Tuesday, I might be able to connect with them on Thursday. Yeah.
And then just one more question, in regards to the tier 1 and tier 2 is there a way to bring that slide back? I just have,
Yeah.
what is it? mean when you go to like tier 2 and tier 3, like what's all involved? Because obviously tier 1 is just what you explained, right? But
Yeah, so tier 1 is what we do for all of our students. It's just good, solid teaching. It's the strategies and things that we provide to all of our students. Tier 2 is our supplemental support. So if we notice that students are struggling a little bit, need a little bit of additional help, I think we need to go back. Is it this one? Is
yeah,
that the one you're looking at? Yeah. And then also on the extension side of things. So being able to provide enrichments and interventions. So extending the learning too, as well. And then tier 3, we don't really talk on tier 3 today, but tier 3 is more intensive intervention. So tier 2, the flex time is really utilized to just provide some of that supplemental support. If you're just missing a concept, you don't necessarily need to be put in any kind of intervention class because you're struggling with a lot of stuff, but rather it's more focused on like, I'm not sure, I'm struggling with this a little bit. I just need that additional help or support. So
but it's mainly focused on academics.
it can be, yeah. So we want to, yes, we want to make sure that we are focusing on the academics, and our teams and teachers are working really hard to make sure that we're identifying students and utilizing that time to support students. But we're also creating opportunities to create extended learning as well. So that's where the enrichments and the extensions come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is really, really exciting. And I really appreciate student testimonials too. That's great work. And thank you so much for sharing. It's a lot to be in front of all of us. So we appreciate you being here. I have a question about, do we have any data on whether this is helping us to do a better job of reducing the amount of missing work? Because, once a student gets behind a little bit, then sometimes that snowballs. Is this helping us keep students more on track? And is this kind of separately, this may be a question better for Ms. Barrett, is this assisting us in meeting that 9th grade on track to graduate standard as well? Or is it too soon to know?
Okay. I'll let Katie speak to that.
So you kind of beat me to it. It is a little bit soon to know. We are seeing our freshmen are doing really well with attendance as well as with being on track. But we haven't finished the first trimester yet. And usually that's sort of our first indicator of how we're doing. And as you know, the last few years haven't been great for comparisons. And we just started this, but we're feeling optimistic. It's looking like it is having a positive impact, but we hope to have some data to show that soon.
That's great. And I apologize. Are we going to look to at attendance as a factor? Like, are we, this is happening consistently on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Are we having a better uptake in showing up on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Hopefully, because they also know they get to spend this time. Or
Yeah, we haven't looked at that yet. I haven't noticed if there's a trend.
yeah, and again, it's early in the year and all of that, but I'm really excited because I think that the choice factor is a big piece of that, and that's exciting.
I'm so sorry. One more question, because just to circle back. It says there, support students in academics, behaviors, and mental health. So does the behaviors and mental health portion fall into like the tier 2, tier 3? And if it does fall into that, is there like a parental involvement when you get to that level? So that parents are kind of are aware of what's going on,
Right.
and support and interventions sort of take place.
So this slide, and Marlene, you're welcome to add if you'd like, is really looking at our entire system of support, not just Flex.
Yeah.
So yeah, within MTSS, when students are part of tier 2 and tier 3 interventions for academics, behaviors, or mental health, their parents are aware of what's
Okay.
going on and
Okay.
what supports they're accessing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the study hall, where study hall is built into some student schedules, and then they have this opportunity to then maybe have a second study hall session or help. I guess my question is, does this eliminate the need to have study hall in a schedule altogether, as where some students benefit from maybe 2 sessions of it and where another student doesn't? Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Are you asking about study halls in their regular schedule?
Yes, and then having a flex opportunity to then maybe do it twice, where a student who doesn't have it built in their schedule only gets it one time.
At the high school level, we don't have study hall as a class on
Okay,
the
still
schedule.
Middle school.
Yeah, but potentially, I don't know if anybody wants to speak to middle school. Okay, and we also don't
Oh,
have
okay.
set study halls on the schedule in middle
Okay,
school.
great. There you go.
I have a question for you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to jump in to say one thing. So I coach soccer at the high school. I am the varsity coach of the girls program. And I will say that the feedback from my girls has been really great regarding flex time, because as you know, when we have away games and we get pulled away, they leave school at 2 o'clock and they don't get home until 10 at night. And so to have that time in the day to get caught up on some of the classes, this has really been supportive for our athletes as well. When you were talking about study hall, it made me think of that. So
Well, I had two boys in middle school and they love flex time. I mean, it's like extra P for them always. So they race to book basketball or whatever competitive thing. And I know they hate getting hard requested, but I think it's an amazing system that they can go and make up some work and work with the teacher. So I've seen it be incredibly positive. My only question was that I did hear some feedback from teachers about it being a little bit wonky with scheduling on Fridays. And so I'm wondering if you guys can provide more clarity. I don't know that I understand it correctly. I know my kids can get on a device as early as like 8 a.m. And so by 8:02, they have their flex. But it sounds like on Fridays, there's like an extra pretty long chunk of time built into the end of the day for kids to schedule flex. And so some of the feedback I'd heard, at least at the middle school level, was that that makes for a very long end of the day on Friday for teachers, because most kids actually don't need any of that time because they did it at 8 a.m. So I'm just wondering what you guys are seeing with that and
yeah.
if any adjustments. need to
So
be
it's
made.
different between the middle school and high school. Well, so I'll say this, for everybody, it opens up Friday at 8 a.m. and it stays open until Monday. I think about 2 p.m. we close the window. So they have Friday morning, all Friday afternoon, all weekend, and then part of Monday. For the high school, they usually try and the teachers connect with students during homeroom, and that's in the morning. So they have opportunities on Friday morning and Monday morning to connect with students and say, hey, make sure you're signing up for flex. At the middle school, they sign up during their flight time. They sign up. We created a period of time, a short period of time at the middle school. I think it's 12 minutes. Is that correct? At the end of the day on Friday, to make sure that we at least carved a little bit of time out in our schedule for teachers to be able to connect with students and make sure they were getting signed up. Because what we've found is when we don't have time to connect with students, we see a lot more students, unscheduled students, when we come to close that window on Monday at 2. We see a lot larger number of unscheduled students. And so just that little reminder, being able to connect with them and say, and we actually have a list that shows us who's unscheduled. And so we can connect with them specifically and say, oh, make sure you get yourself scheduled for flex next week. And it's still a learning process for all the students, middle school and high school. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think it does.
Okay.
I think teachers who have probably like really fun or popular flex times, they probably are the ones who don't see the need for the extra 12 minutes because,
Sure.
theirs is full.
Yeah. And for some students, you're right. They're going to log in at like 8:02 and be on top of it. And then for others, I think we're still kind of working it out. We're still trying to receive feedback and kind of adjust the process. But so we've started out with, and we're still kind of fine tuning it. So.
I think it's very cool. I think all the students really love having a little bit of opportunity to choose.
Okay, great.
So
Thank
thank you
you.
guys for sharing with us. We appreciate it. Are there any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to board reports. And we will start with Dr. Lyon.
Thank you very much. We had a person come on board this summer who never really got a proper introduction. And so I want to do that this evening. Gia Saporito is our new Director of Nutrition Services. And Gia, do you want to go to the podium as I say a few words? I'm so excited that Gia has joined the district. She is trained as a nutritionalist, a Oregon State grad, has done a lot of work with farm to school connections, which I think is just fabulous. And we are very excited that you are here, and you really never had the opportunity to be introduced to the board of directors. And so welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Superintendent Line. Can you guys hear me okay? I think I might be too tall for this ride. Does this come out? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Superintendent Lyon said, my name's Gia Saporito, and I'm so happy to be serving as the nutrition director here at Sherwood School District. A little bit about me. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm coming to you from the McMinnville School District. And I have a 3.5-month-old at home who's keeping me and my husband very busy and very tired. And I've only been here for a few weeks, but everyone who I've met has been so warm and so welcoming. And I'm just really looking forward to growing the nutrition department here and just being a member of the community that you have all built. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Gia. Appreciate that. The only other thing in the superintendent's report, I just want to acknowledge the great work of both of our collective bargaining groups, leadership teams. They were integral in being part of what's being presented tonight as the pathway forward for the school district. And I just want to make sure they get the proper acknowledgement. For SEA, it's Kyler and Nancy and Wes. And for OSEA, it's Patina, Rebecca, and Brad. And to me, they did an outstanding job of representing their members and always having their members' interests at heart first, but also, and most importantly, always looking out for the students of the school district and making very practical and very difficult decisions that got us through this thing that we have been subject to over the last couple of months. So they have a really difficult job because they have members that are coming at this from all different angles. And I was just so impressed and continue to be impressed with how they know the values, they represent their members, and they do a really, really good job of moving this district forward as part of this team. So much appreciation to them.
Thank you. All right, Miss Paisley, do you have a report for us this evening?
All right, yes, I do. Thank you. I just had a few things to talk about. So this past weekend, all of the student councils in Oregon went to Seaside for a little conference, and we all got to speak with the other schools, not even just in our league or nearby, even in the middle of nowhere. And we all shared new concepts and new ideas, and we're really looking forward to being able to implement some of the stuff that we learned about here in Sherwood. Last week was Cancer Awareness Week at the high school, and we raised over $2,400, and it's all going to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So that was really exciting. And Sherwood High School was the only school selected to go and decorate and visit Dornbecker's Children's Hospital. We're decorating it for the holidays, and it's the little kids wing, these 2 floors there. So that's really exciting. I think we're gonna probably go sometime next month. And this Friday is our second playoff game for football, and we decided to make it a purple out for epilepsy awareness because there have been multiple students in the Sherwood School District who have gone through things to do with epilepsy. And this year, one of the cheer captains, Mallory Gillum, has epilepsy, and so we're doing it for her this Friday. And that's all I have to say.
That's great. Thank you for sharing with us. I love hearing all the things you guys are doing over there. I know there's so many more things and you're able to report, but it's always so awesome to hear how you guys are so engaged in the community. All right, Miss Harmony Carson, do you have anything to share with us tonight? It's optional.
Yeah, Chair Hawkins, fellow board members, Dr. Lyon, and executive staff. I'm just honored to be selected and appointed to the board. I look forward to working with all of you in a positive and collaborative way to kind of right this ship the way it needs to go. And we all have a common goal, and that's to do right by the students, community, and staff for Sherwood. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee.
I just wanted to report, I was able to attend and do a little bit of volunteer on the Halloween activity. And that seemed to be really well attended. And I saw a lot of kids just having a great time and smiles all around. I, I got to paint a lot of hair. And so if you're still washing that out, I do apologize because I put a lot in some of those kids' hairs. But it was just my favorite time was just watching the kids and how much fun they were having and the smiles they had. So I just wanted to feedback on that.
That's great. I helped at that too. I was the bounce house and it deflated at least 3 times while I was manning it. So that was pretty exciting. But nobody got hurt. Director Adamson.
I was really pleased to work at the Halloween event as well and really appreciated Jeff stepping in because I think even my hair was starting to have a sheen to it by the time. It was great. It was great. The kids were having a wonderful time and that's, again, just the joy of watching everybody be back in an environment that feels much more normal. It's just very encouraging and really fun to see just an entire middle school full of kids running around having a great time. It was wonderful. I also just want to acknowledge that we have a lot of sports teams and other activities, including the marching band, that are kind of finishing up their seasons and just really high performing this year. And so just big congratulations to everybody that's finishing on a high note and doing well and seeing all of these kids just really involved and engaged in their community. And then last but not least, I just really want to acknowledge the work of the district staff and all of the administrative teams and the associations and coming together to bring forward the recommendation this evening. I know it's just been really difficult. These choices are impossible and but grateful with the speed at which they're able to be brought so that we can make some decisions and move forward.
Director Thor.
Yes, so I also had the pleasure of working the Halloween event, and I have to thank my husband because we had the pleasure of working the Wheel of Misfortune for 2 hours, and the wheel actually was broken before we got to it. So he, for 2 hours, stood behind the wheel and was the wheel stopper. So he's a really good sport with that. Thank you, Mark, if you're watching. And that was a great time though. Way to go, raising all that money. And the kids had so much fun. And they learned very quickly that I'm kind of a pushover when it comes to giving them prizes. So they had a good time. Sherwood High School, I loved hearing the report tonight. Great job to all of those students and all of the awareness that they're bringing, the way that they're representing this community. I'm a crier, so, of course you made me cry with all that wonderful news, but I'm so proud of all you guys. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that, because the way that you guys are representing Sherwood is phenomenal. And that does not go unnoticed. And you should be really, really, really proud of yourself. So you're very welcome. And have fun decorating at Dornbecker. Christmas decorating is the best. My house is already done. Okay. And then last but not least, yes, the administration, thank you for all your hard work. So much hard work. There's been emails close to midnight. I'm just blown away. None of this is easy, and the way that it's been addressed and handled, and we are really lucky. We're a really lucky community to have such amazing administrators, and such amazing teachers and everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing this community band together over this. So that's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I mean, I echo that sentiment as well. And I know I've expressed that to you guys, but we are all so grateful for the time and effort you guys have put into this and the difficult conversations and the really hard choices that have had to be made. And I think more than anything, grateful that you have allowed so many other people to sit at that table with you and been willing to listen and have an open mind and an open ear and an open heart to many of our requests as well. And So I know the community is eager to see where those things fall tonight, and we will not waste too much more time before we get you there, I promise. With that being said, we will switch over to public comment. We only have one public comment that pertains to the agenda items. And then the rest of the public comments will go at the end of our meeting. So I will give Christine a moment to cue that up. Let's see. As a reminder, public comment is a time for board members to hear from the community. We will not be responding to your comments this evening. That goes for the ones later as well. This is just a time for us to really listen to you, to take notes, to figure out our thoughts on those things and maybe get some questions answered, and hopefully report back at a later time if we have an answer to be able to give you. Are you ready to get started? Close to?
Michael Jones, no city listed. In 2018-19 school year, Sherwood had enrollment at 5,299 students. In 2021-22, that dropped to 4,868, a drop of 431 students, while at the same time, we had our teachers increased by 18. If we use a conservative spending of $10,000 per student, our district lost $4.3 million due to drop in enrollment. I would encourage the district to try and find out why those 431 students left the district. My wife and I decided to pull our youngest child out of public education for a couple of reasons. With the middle school enrollment of over 1,100 students, the overall size of the middle school has been an issue back before the Ridges when it was only SMS. We had many friends that shared stories about how the middle school administration could not handle the sheer number of students, a lot of behavioral issues mostly related to kids determining the pecking order among the students and seeing how far they can push the administration. This past year, from what I have heard, is not much better, having to close bathrooms because of vandalism. Were the kids ever held accountable? We did not want our kid to be just another number. Number two, the lack of focus on education is the second reason we moved our kid to private school. Oregon's recent test scores reflecting this by ranking number 48 out of 50. When ODE and our governor decide not to encourage kids to do better as they should have. Instead, they lower the graduation requirements by allowing proficiency in any of the core areas versus requiring proficiency in all of the areas. Over the last 5 to 8 years, the amount of focus on non-educational material has increased to the point that it changes the focal point of going to school in the first place. The amount of effort that is directed at the progressive ideology of ODE and the previous school board is directly reducing the amount of time and effort to teach the basic principles that are the bedrock of a great education. And that concludes this portion of public comment.
Thank you. We will move into our information and discussion portion of the agenda and begin with the student investment account annual report.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Lyon, Chair Hawkins, and board members. Tonight, I'm going to go through our student investment account annual report for the 21-22 school year for last year. So I'll start by sharing a little bit of background information on the student investment account, our approved plan that we went through, and then a little bit of an update on the annual report. So what we carried out last year. Okay. The student investment account was part of the Student Success Act approved in 2019. And it was funded by the corporate activities tax. The Oregon Department of Education allocated nearly $500 million in non-competitive grant funding for schools and districts. Unlike general funds, grant funds have specific requirements for how they are spent by school districts. For the SIA grant, funds are required to focus on increasing instructional time, which means we could use them for more hours or school days. We could do something with summer programs. We could do before and after school programs, things like that. They also could be used to address student health and safety, like social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices, mental and behavioral health, more school health professionals in our buildings, activities like that, or providing a well-rounded education. Those are things like our art, our music, our PE classes, STEM, CTE, engaging electives, college, credit opportunities, and even dropout prevention is all under that category. And then finally, we could use them to reduce class size. In Sherwood, we used the majority of our funds to address student health and safety, reduce class size, and provide well-rounded education through things like our elementary STEM program, for example. As a part of the grant application, districts had to go through a community engagement process. And in Sherwood, they brought together a strategic planning committee, which included administrators, staff, board members, parents, community leaders, and that was all to really ensure that our strategic plan was aligned and that the community was engaged in that process so that they could really provide feedback for any initiative that we wanted to move forward with. Here were some of the findings from that engagement process. In addition to the strategic planning process, we surveyed all different stakeholder groups, from students to parents, community members, and the priorities that emerged were the expanded mental health supports, increased STEM opportunities, more music and art option, reducing class sizes, and supports for student behavior and academics. And here are some of the investments that we made. So we added more mental health and behavior support specialists. We added associate principal at Ridges Elementary. We had campus monitors and graduation coaches. We reduced class sizes at Hawksview. We added elementary STEM programming and staffing, additional music and PE teachers, and an MTSS coordinator for our secondary schools. So last year, we made some progress with this initiative and our funding. We expanded our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of support for academics and behavior, which really established flex offerings at the high school last year. That continued, as you heard earlier tonight, at the middle school for this year. And we maintained the staffing from the 2019-20 school year with those grant funds. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, so in summary, our priorities for our SIA investments really remain the same as the year before, with a few minor adjustments due to our district budget reductions. And in preparation for next school year, we are moving forward with a new initiative from ODE. And we're renewing our commitment to increase community engagement. We've done some superintendent listening sessions. We started surveying. We got a lot of our community groups together. And we're starting the new initiative of integrated guidance with the Oregon Department of Education. What that means is it really takes the 6 initiatives, including SIA, and it braids them all together. And so our high school success, our student investment count, our everyday matters initiative, continuous improvement planning, career and technical, which is CTE programming, and early indicator and intervention systems, all making up about 10% of our district's budget, are now all braided together. And right now we're in the process of really engaging our community. So you might have seen surveys and principals newsletters. That is all part of this process. It's really to get family feedback, other stakeholder feedback, community feedback to support and determine what we want to use these funds for. Any questions?
It looks like there's no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. All right, up next, we have Ms. Penny Somm. She'll share a presentation with us on student achievement.
Good evening, Board Chair Hawkins, Superintendent Lyon, and Board of Directors. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update on our district report card, which covers our students' journey through K-12 education. The measures that I'm going to share this evening are accountability measures that have a strong correlation to success in school. The format in which I will share the data is a comparison in 2018-19, which was the year prior to the pandemic, which was the last time we had a complete set of data, to 21-22, which was last year, where we also were able to have a complete set of data. You'll notice the impact of the pandemic on our students' learning, and a bright spot where our students continue to perform well above the state average, which says a lot about our the perseverance and resilience of our staff and our students throughout the pandemic. The next two slides show the percentage of regular attenders. Regular attenders are students who attend school more than 90% of enrolled days. There's a strong connection between early attendance patterns and academic achievement. Students who attend school regularly get more opportunities to learn. The early years in which students gain the foundational skills in math and reading, they learn to read during those K-2 years, and it helps them establish good habits of attending school. Our chronic absenteeism rate nearly doubled at all levels since the beginning of the pandemic. And we understand that there's many reasons why students miss school, and our goal is to improve the data reflected in the 21-22 to closer meet pre-pandemic numbers. Our focus is on chronic absenteeism, and that is students missing more than 10% of enrolled days. And this includes all absences, excused and unexcused. And our schools have already begun this work. We have a district attendance team in place with members from each level, and this team has reviewed the district attendance process. It has been in collaboration with our ESD partners, and it has established a multi-tiered system of support for attendance. Each school has an attendance team, and the school teams review data on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and they are implementing the tiered supports to reconnect and re-engage students. School staff are also reaching out early and partnering with families, and we have communicated to the community the importance of attendance, and also it's being shared through our school newsletters and district newsletters. Attendance is key for us to improve. The kids need to be present, so every day matters, and that's a state initiative as well. And this slide is also attendance, but it is broken into student groups. This information helps us determine how to allocate resources. I want to note that where you see complete white bars, that means that there are less than 10 students in that student group, and so that data will be suppressed. The next 4 slides will cover academic data points, 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math. This slide shows the percentage of students reading at benchmark in 3rd grade. This is an important data point for several reasons. Reading is an essential skill for succeeding in school. It's more difficult to close the reading gap after 3rd grade. And by the end of 3rd grade, the focus changes from learning to read and reading to learn. As you can see, there's been a drop in the percentage of students reading at grade level in 3rd grade. And to address this, our schools are implementing the multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, which was referred to earlier. This system looks at all levels of support, from whole group instruction to intensive individual targeted supports. The PLC time is essential to this work in analyzing student data and determining which students need supports or extensions. MTSS provides a system for staff to catch students early and provide the targeted interventions where needed. In addition to providing small groups and support during core instruction, the elementary level has implemented extended learning time, and this is more time for targeted interventions and enrichment to happen. This slide also shows students meeting benchmark in third grade reading. However, it is broken down by student groups. One of the main purposes of the Oregon State Assessment is to measure student group learning so that meaningful assertions can be made about how well schools, districts, and the state are fulfilling their responsibility to provide all students with high quality grade level educational opportunities. This information helps make decisions about resource allocation and set educational priorities for groups of students. It is not to evaluate students. Throughout the nation, it was predicted that certain student groups would be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and Sherwood was not immune to this, as you can see by the graph. The second academic measure is students who meet the 8th grade benchmark in math. Students who meet the 8th grade benchmark are more likely to meet with success in high school and beyond. Critical thinking skills that are shaped in middle school have the potential to carry students forward to future success. The impact of the pandemic was significant at the middle level statewide. As you can see, the state average of students meeting the benchmark in 8th grade math was 27%. Again, our students, though not where we want the percentage to be, performed well above the state average. As you heard earlier during Spotlight On, the secondary level is implementing MTSS as well. This includes flex time to focus on interventions for students struggling to meet grade level benchmarks, or enrichment for those meeting at a high level. This work is in the beginning stages, and teams are working on finding the best implementation plan. The middle school also has math and reading support classes at all 3 grade levels for students who are struggling to meet grade level benchmarks. Again, it was predicted that some student groups would be disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and our data supports that prediction. Ninth grade on track. We're excited to share that a high percentage of our 9th grade students are on track to graduate. Students are considered on track if they, by the end of their first year of high school, earned at least 1/4 of the credits required for graduation. Sherwood High School has many supports in place for our 9th grade students. It starts with the transition from middle school. There is a 9th grade success team. This team meets bi-weekly to analyze data, grades, and attendance, and creates plans to intervene or celebrate successes. This team was established early in the school year, and right out of the gate, they began making connections with the students and their families. The high school has also implemented a flex time to support students and offer opportunities for intervention and enrichment. And this is the slide broken down by student group. And then finally is our on-time graduation. The 4-year on-time graduation is the 4-year cohort graduation indicator. It's the percentage of students in a cohort adjusted for transfers into and out of the district that earn a standard diploma within 4 years of entering high school. Our on-time graduation percentage remains high, and it is a highlight of which to be proud. To wrap things up, it is clear that the pandemic impacted our students and loss of learning occurred. Still, there are bright spots, and our students and staff persevered through the difficult challenges in education these past 2 years. We're working hard to implement systems to address the learning loss. And many of these systems are in the early stages of implementation, and we continue to adjust to meet the needs of our students. Any questions?
Yes, I have some questions.
Okay.
You admit, on the graphs there, you had you had indicated several areas in which there were averages. So you were comparing, Sherwood compared to the state average. I'm curious if you have any comparisons, especially like in the third grade language arts, other programs in Sherwood for third grades, like charter schools or something, how Sherwood School District compared to them in that same school district.
We do not have that data. It is just the state takes all third grade scores, and that's what we have with our school, and then the state scores.
Okay, and so we don't know the range of that, what the average is brought from. We don't know the range of those numbers. Do
Oh,
we?
no.
No. So we
You
don't know
can-
if we're in the 90th percentile or if we're in the 50th or 40th percentile. Is that correct?
Hi. So I think what you're asking is, where does Sherwood rank amongst all Oregon schools?
Well, I think more specifically is, where does Sherwood rank compared to other Sherwood schools?
Compared to other Sherwood schools. We certainly could review with Sherwood charter schools. We wouldn't be able to review that data with private schools unless the private school took the state assessment, and they don't always do that.
Sure. Okay, and this leads to the other part is, so in terms of factors that might have contributed to the differences, do we have any data on parent involvement or efforts from the district or the schools that coordinated with the parents? I'm familiar with some research that during the pandemic, when schools were locked down, students fared best when parents were most involved during that period of time. And so I'm curious if there's been any look into that for school specifically, and how whether or not we've nurtured that moving forward as a factor of intervention moving forward.
Go ahead.
So I think I think, yes, it is true that students who had family support at home likely were able to perform better or achieve more learning online when they were on the computer, because they had family assistant,
Sure.
parent or family member, right? Or somebody else who could come support, like sometimes people did group learning, or they hired maybe a nanny or something, and that person supported the child. So I think that's true. We don't necessarily collect that data as a school district, and I am unaware that the state has collected that data for public education. I think you had one more question.
Well, I think I think you've addressed it, is that,
Yeah.
so we know, I guess I think maybe I'm just voicing something here, is that we know that parental involvement during a period of time in which the school was, let's say less involved, that protected the children's education and maintained a high level of performance. And yet we're not tracking that moving forward. But we know that was a major factor in the student's outcome. And so I'm concerned that we're not going back and saying, hey, wait, we have these factors that we know contribute to a great deal of outcome, and we're not tracking that to support the parents that might need the support in those type of areas. And so maybe an intervention isn't the student, but the supporting the families that the student resides in, because we know that that's a major factor in their outcome. And so I think that's just what I'm trying to get at, which leads to, sorry, my last question. And so I noticed that one of the the final, on one of the, I think I said it was on time. Basically the standard was, did they get a diploma? Okay, so we know that the standards have been reduced for diploma, but so this is a two-part question. By reducing the standards of getting a diploma, didn't that just artificially increase the number of getting a diploma, the numbers of getting a diploma?
I think the circumstances were different for those students and they didn't have the same opportunities to earn some of the credits at that, during that time.
Sure. So we're comparing apples and oranges here because it's not a straight comparison. And so do we know of those students, and I think it was like 97% that were on time. Do we know if those students are actually prepared for after school or after high school performance? Are they prepared for college? Are they prepared for work? Are they prepared to meet the demands of the workforce and those type of things? Because I have anecdotal evidence that they're not. And so my concern is if our outcome is we get a diploma and we've reduced the standard of getting a diploma, and then we send them out into the world and they're not prepared for that, then are we doing the best we can for the students? And I think that's the question I have. What can we track that data?
So I think the question that you're asking is the question that the teaching and learning department like thinks about all the time.
Awesome.
Are we creating students that are persistent, and do we prepare them for life, college, career, whatever that brings them, right? Whatever their journey is, are we adequately preparing them? We do have some ability to collect data around persistence data, and persistence data is 18 months after they've graduated high school. We get that through the National Clearinghouse. So how we'll do that is 18 months from the last year that the students really go through the high school. So the first year of the pandemic, we are collecting that data right now, and we'll kind of see how that works out. In terms of graduation requirements, the graduation changed slightly, but it was the essential skills requirement of either you take the state assessment and you meet, or you create a work sample in the core, so reading and math. And students generally could create a work sample through a course, a class, kind of like a credit recovery, but in that case, it would be a work sample recovery. That's the part that's been waived. So it's not the actual in like classes, but more of the test, the state assessment that's been waived. And that is coming back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
I'd be really interested in on that graduation piece, if we could get a sense of how many folks during that period of time achieved both pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the Sherwood diploma versus the standard state diploma, and whether substantially contributing to the difference there. Just for those that are new, there is a difference between what Sherwood requires, which is a higher number of credits and more kind of diversity of credits than what in diversity in the sense of you need to have so many that are art and so many that are elective and so many that are all the things to achieve the Sherwood diploma versus just the standard state diploma. We offer both for very good reasons, but then historically the number of kids achieving that Sherwood diploma has been very high. And I'd be really interested to see what does that look like from 2019 graduating class to the 2021 graduating class, and whether we've seen a big shift in that, or whether that mostly held up, and which I think speaks to the point that Jeff was talking about, is how prepared are our kids, because they're achieving a Sherwood diploma, they're going to be more prepared. I also am really interested in whether we've noticed any impact on, I think it's really since 2017, students have been able to opt out of some of the standardized tests, and whether we believe some of the difference between where we were in 2019 and where we are in 2021 has to do with the number of students actually opting out of those statewide tests. Anecdotally, so this is, what I saw back in 2017, 2018, 2019, as students were doing that, were the kids that were busy. The really smart kids that were busy and had other things to do had themselves opted out because why do I need to sit for this test? And that I think had I think, a material impact on our scores. I'd be really interested in that data as well, and just your assessment of how that impacts us and what these numbers look like.
We did have high numbers opt out last year of the state test. So it very
Please
well
don't opt
could.
your kids out. We really want to know how they're doing. It's obviously your choice as a parent. We also want to know what your kids are doing.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you so much. All right. It looks like I'm up next. All right, last June, we hired Dr. Lyon on an interim basis and extended him a one-year contract. It is now time for the board to consider what our next steps will be in hiring a permanent superintendent. And you'll have to bear with me, my voice is horrible. I just got over being sick. There are really two options before us. We can engage in a superintendent search, or we can begin negotiating a permanent contract with Dr. Lyon. I will not speak for these other four up here. However, I will say that I have been nothing but impressed with Dr. Lyon's leadership and desire to improve the Sherwood School District. In complete fairness, this district was not everything that he thought he was signing up to lead. The financial problems that we have found ourselves in has been really stressful and required far more hours than we could ever afford to pay him to work. It has required countless difficult decisions and conversations, and through it all, he has maintained an optimistic mindset and a strong desire to see Sherwood School District come out on the other side of this in a better position than we had imagined even for ourselves. He is highly aware that there is a massive amount of work that will still need to be done to achieve this, but he is working hard to build relationships with all of our staff and is consistently open to hearing from community members. I've been lucky. We have seen eye to eye on many things, but when we don't, he has been very willing to listen and to consider my perspective. In fact, many times saying, well, wait, let's circle back and rethink that for a minute, which has been a really welcome thing to walk into and have those kind of conversations. He has answered all of my questions to the best of his ability or found someone who can, and has really welcomed our participation as board members in pretty much anything that we've wanted to become involved in. I personally believe that Dr. Lyon is the strongest candidate to continue to lead our district. However, this evening, we will simply share with you a draft of the proposed superintendent appointment standards and criteria. These still may be modified by the board, and as always, we welcome feedback from the community. So we will share these tonight, and we will hopefully adopt them as our criteria, but we would like to hear from members of the community. If you have things to say or comments to share with us, those are always welcome. Let's see, oh, that's very tiny. Good thing I have a copy. We will go through these. I can try to read them, although my voice sounds horrible. Let me take a sip of water. I can read them, I just sound horrible. So this was kind of a combination of efforts, but truthfully, I want all of the directors up here to look these over. We can have discussion, we can make edits. This does not have to be a final draft. And this is not a document that we have to adopt to have forever, but this is a working document that we would like to look at for hiring a superintendent for this opportunity. All right. The Sherwood School District Board of Directors, in accordance with board policy CBB, recruitment and appointment of a superintendent, establishes the following standards, criteria, and policy directives as they pertain to the hiring of a permanent superintendent in the 2022-2023 school year. A proven willingness to establish and maintain partnerships with the city and the county. Proven experience as a transparent, community-oriented leader, committed to growing the level of educational excellence in the Sherwood School District for all students. Experience in building strong collaborative relationships with school board members, administrative staff, certified and classified staff, and their association leadership, students, parents, and community partners. Willingness and ability to tackle challenging administrative and organizational issues head-on, build strong oversight and accountability structures, and a culture of proactive problem solving. Ensure the district is a place where all students and families feel welcome. Experience empowering educators and staff to continue to grow in their profession and contribute to the learning community within the Sherwood School District. experienced and well qualified, PhD in educational administration or a similar degree, a minimum of 7 years of experience as an assistant superintendent and or superintendent of varying size school districts, minimum of 5 years of experience as an assistant superintendent and or superintendent in Oregon, knowledge and experience in leadership of the Sherwood School District. It is the intention of the board to review the qualifications and performance to date of the current interim superintendent utilizing the above listed standards. Based on that review, the board may elect to appoint the interim superintendent to the permanent position of superintendent as soon as the December 2022 meeting of the board. And with that, I welcome any of your comments, edits, thoughts. Not everybody at one time.
Well, Madam Chair, I would like to just say expressly that I think that it's important that this not be binding on future school boards and any future hiring activity of a superintendent. I think it's really important that that standards and qualifications are set based upon what's needed by the district, what's reflective of parent and student and staff desires for this community at the point in time you're making that hire. So I just, more than this doesn't have to, my view is this is not binding on any future hire. There are lots of ways to select and hire a superintendent. I think in this case, in this moment, given the challenges of this school year, and the amazing performance of our interim superintendent, I think that these are appropriate and reflective of much of what I've heard is important to this community over the last several months and what I believe is necessary for a superintendent to be able to do over the next several years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know we looked really hard at this policy and wanted to make sure that these standards met what we are looking for right now, but it is meant to be a living document and it is meant to be reviewed and adjusted, based on what is going on in the community at that time. So at this time, this is kind of where we're starting. And so I just want you guys to have some time. You can think about it. We can also reopen it for discussion in a few minutes when it's an action item, but I wanted you guys to have time to read through the draft and make any edits that you saw fit. So if there's not any edits, we can move forward. That was really easy. All right. And I believe our last item in this section is the spending reduction plan, what everybody has been waiting to hear. So I'll welcome Dr. Lyon, Mr. Bennett, and Mr. Emmert to lead us in that.
All righty, here we are, and my role is simply to kick this off and look at where we've been and how we got to this evening. So, Christine, next slide. Thank you. The clicker. Well, there you go. You're good. All right. So let me review the timeline that we have used to get us to this evening. This is all just a quick review. In July and August, we identified the problems that had occurred for the prior 2 years within the building of school district budgets. And we immediately brought in very respected third-party consultants who in September got into our books and verified that the problems were indeed substantial and needed corrective action. And on our website is their 15-page summary of findings and recommendations of how we move forward and return the Sherwood School District to financial stability. September and October, the last 2 months, we have been doing a number of things seen and unseen. And Gary Bennett, our Chief Financial Officer, and Steve Emmert, Human Resources, have been using every tool available to them to use essentially one-time funds and adjust different funding sources and streams to reduce what really started as a $5 or $6 million deficit and hole, and get it down to the $2.2 million. And so once we had the 2.2 million identified, that's when in October, the latter part of October, we started the very collaborative process with our administrators and with our collective bargaining leadership teams to arrive at what you'll hear tonight is $1.6 million in reductions. More than half of those reductions come out of the central office. And so that was very important and addresses many of the community concerns about where those cuts were going to come from. And I assure you, if we could have found 1.6 million in reductions out of district office, we would have. But we were able to find more than half of the reductions out of central office. On November 7th, the two bargaining associations had taken to their members a proposal of 3 furlough days. And a furlough day is the day where the entire school district comes to a stop. It's no one is working, with the caveat that there might be some emergency personnel that must ensure the safety of the buildings and make sure that they're attended to. But beyond that, every single person takes a proportional pay cut, beginning with the superintendent, all through district office, every campus, every department. And that yields about $200,000 in saved salary. The silver lining on that is that's essentially 2 or 3 positions that you don't have to eliminate. By taking a proportional cut of everyone in your district, you are actually saving jobs. And that was important. So part of this equation became what is going to work for the membership, the employees of the district, what is going to work for the community, and how do you walk that tightrope so that you balance lost school days, lost instructional time with the cuts that you can make internally. And so we did that. On November 7th, both associations members, that means all the employees of this school district, gave their formal approval to the proposal you hear tonight of 3 furlough days. And this evening, we are going to ask the board, after the presentations of Mr. Bennett and Mr. Emmert, to approve those personnel actions and the calendar adjustment. And then, if approved over the next 2 weeks, we will implement those reductions according to a schedule and the right time to do so. None of this is seen as an accomplishment that we like. All of this harms people, harms students, and harms the Sherwood School District. It had to be done to restore this district to some degree of financial stability in the immediate present school year, and it puts us on a trajectory where we can return stability permanently over the next coming years. So with that said, I will turn it over to Mr. Bennett. And here's your clicker.
Thank you. See, that's good mentoring right there. So I'll talk through the reduction proposal with you and kind of get into the details of it. Before I start, I do want to make a comment. I mean, many people have thanked me for catching this problem. And while I appreciate that, that's really doesn't really tell the story of what happened. I didn't figure out this problem. I just listened to my team and what they were sharing with me. As I transitioned to the role, Stephanie Tafoya and our team was talking to me about concerns about cash flow and June payroll, concerns about growing negative account balances, looking at our fund balance and saying, we're not done booking revenue yet, but things don't look the same. I just think it's important. Once she shared that with me, we really started digging in. We hired consultants. We confirmed there was a problem. We worked together. I just want to make sure that the board and the community know that my team has done a great job, and I'm really fortunate to work with such a good team. And I've gotten credit that I don't really deserve. And I think it needs to be known that they deserve a lot of this credit. The other thing I just wanted to say, Dr. Lyon already said, while we go through these reductions, it's just really hard to minimize the impact this has on the people impacted. Even while there are some bright spots and that we were able to save a lot of positions, I think, through some creative maneuvering and through attrition, none of that helps if you're one of the people who got reduced. And I think all of us are really upset and just have this kind of pit in our stomach about that. And I just felt compelled to say that to those impacted in multiple different ways. So with that said, let's walk through it. The first couple of slides are part of an infographic that we actually sent out to staff Friday of the week before last, just to give them an overview of the reductions. And so the first one just shows the staff reduction savings from both school building FTE, and FTE is a word you will see a lot in here. That means full-time equivalent. That is a full-time staff member. So if we say 1.0 FTE, that means a full-time position. If we say 0.5 FTE, that's a half-time position. Sometimes you might see like a 0.94 FTE. That might be like a 7.5 hour a day position that we've eliminated, but it means a full-time equivalent 8 hours. So this shows where our building FTE comes from, where our reductions of FTE comes from. About 42% from the schools and 57% from the district office. The next slide shows the impact on the various employee groups. You can see that the largest number of staff reduced were our classified staff at just over 13, almost 14 full-time equivalents. We only reduced 3.25 certified, which are our teaching staff and our counselors and things of that nature, people who have a license to do their position. About 1.1% of teachers, and then we reduced 2 administrators, or about 8% of our administrator workforce in this piece. There is silver lining may not be the right word here, but when we started to realize there may be a problem, we took what we called a strategic pause in spending and hiring, and we didn't refill any positions. And we really tried to be cautious about refilling before we knew where we were. And so between that and other people moving on to other positions, we were able to get just about half of our positions through attrition, meaning people resigned from the district. We didn't have to lay anybody off. And that's a job that we didn't have to lose. And so that is one bright spot, that we're able to get about half of these through attrition. We'll start to walk through what the actual reductions were here, and you'll see what it is we reduced. So administrators, this was 2 district office administrators. One was our director of maintenance and facilities. That was actually a position through attrition, and then our director of student family access and engagement. And we reduced one of our mental health specialists, a certified mental health coordinator. District level reductions continued. We had several classified staff we reduced. We were able to combine some positions together. We had a resignation of our transportation router, and we were able to do some combination of positions to save half an FTE there. We had a half an FTE at the print shop. We struggled to hire custodians, and we never can find, and we struggled to find substitute custodians and nutrition services. And so we had a floater position that moved between buildings when we had an absence or something, or when we couldn't fill a position. We reduced both of those, and we reduced one of our technology assistants. That one was also through attrition, as were the 2 floater positions. Like most of our schools, professional development was a reduction in all of our departments and many of our schools, and that comes in the form of substitutes, extra duty, conferences, travel, things of that nature. We had some services provided by outside agencies. We contracted with other agencies to provide some nursing services, which we've been getting by with without to this point so far this year. And so it's not really a reduction in nursing services, but we're just not spending money with outside agencies that we thought we would. And also some issues around student placements. We just haven't needed some spots. We've been able to save some money there. We've moved whatever capital purchases we can to the bond. Or we've eliminated them altogether, one of the 2. Some things just don't qualify, and they're things we've had to make. And then just general supplies. And you'll see those things repeat throughout the presentation. Director Adamson.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I just want to confirm, for those that are listening online or may not be as aware, that any capital purchases that we've moved to the bond meet the criteria for using those bond funds. So we're not violating the covenants that we agreed to when we issued those bonds. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We are staying true to that. We're being really careful and thoughtful about that. And it wasn't a substantial amount of money we were able to move to the bond, but what we could free up the general fund, we did do that.
Thank you.
Moving on to school level reductions. We had a counselor reduction at the elementary school. We had 4.5 counselors. We're down to 4. We had 1 full-time certified staff leave our Student Success Center at the high school. We'd actually added 1.25 FTE to that last spring, and so we're reducing that back down to where it was before. We had a 0.25 FTE English language arts teacher at the high school. And what that will result in is just 1 less English language arts class in grades 9 through 12 for the second 2 trimesters of the year. So because high school students change classes every trimester, there's no major disruption there. And a half an FTE of a temporary band teacher, and those students will be spread.
Yeah, for those of you listening at home, we're just gonna get a new battery in the mic here, and then we will continue here in just a second.
Thankfully, batteries were not a budget.
All right, we're back.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about the little delay there. Thank you, Ms. Andrade, for the quick solution and re-upping the microphone. So how much of this part was cut out? So I just want to make sure cover it for the people at home. Should I just do the whole thing again? Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So we're looking now at the school level reductions. These are the licensed teacher certified staff at the top of the screen we're looking at. We reduced by 0.5 FTE in counselor. We went from 4.5 at the elementary down to 4.0. We reduced 1 full-time teacher in our Student Success Center at the high school. Previously in the spring, we'd added 1.25 FTE to that program for this year, and so we reduced 1 of those back. We have a 0.25 of an English language arts teacher at the high school, and so what that will look like is just 1 fewer high school English language arts classes in grades 9 through 12 each of the next 2 trimesters. And so because students change courses each trimester, that's not disruptive to students like it would be like cutting a teacher if you lost your teacher and went to another teacher's classroom. And then we had a half of a 0.5 FTE temporary band teacher at the middle school, and those students will be distributed into other band classes. And so we really tried to minimize our disruptions to the school level and to the classroom level in particular. And so these were the only reductions of teaching staff or certified staff at the school level that we had. There were also some pretty significant reductions at the school level in professional development. That includes sending teachers to conferences. Occasionally there's travel to conferences, depending on what it is. Most of it is in getting substitutes or extra duty to pay teachers to do work outside of the school day or classified staff. And we reduced a lot of that for this year. And then just general supplies were also reduced by different levels.
Mr. Bennett, will any of those certified changes require students to reforecast or change classes?
I don't believe any will require them to reforecast. It is possible that the band reduction may have some change, some classes, but I don't believe it will reforecast, and I don't believe it's a major disruption. Would that be an accurate statement? Okay.
Thank you.
So continuing with our school level reductions. So the elementary staff reduced their general education instructional assistants by 10%. The thought process there was not really exactly mirroring the reduction of students, but we didn't reduce instructional assistant staff when we lost students, and so reducing it by a proportional amount. 3 special education instructional assistants, and we anticipate those will come through attrition. We've already picked up a couple through attrition, and we'll pick up the last one shortly. We had reduction in our media center hours at all 3 levels, although it varied a little bit. We reduced a campus monitor. That one was also through attrition. Campus monitor graduation coach, which was almost a full-time position at the high school. A little bit of reduction in the campus monitor at the middle school. And then you can see counseling secretary at the high school, reduction in half of full-time equivalent. And then reduction at the middle school for both the lunch supervisor and the wellness room staff as well. So bits and pieces of a lot of positions in some cases. And so some of these folks just had their hours or benefits, not just had their hours or benefits reduced. I don't mean to minimize it. There are some people who had a drastic change in what their compensation looked like in some of these bits and pieces that were reduced. And others were just ended up being reductions either through attrition or through layoff. There were some other reductions that came into play. The employee groups you see there all agreed to waive for a year their tuition reimbursement. Some of it had already been spent in some of the groups, and so we weren't going to ask for that back. But what was left, the employee groups voted to give back along with the furlough days. We are going to eliminate a storage unit by moving some of those things onto our campuses. We've created some extra space to do that. We'll combine a rural bus route. We were struggling with this route anyway and considering. So one challenge we faced was the bus route takes long enough that the students were being dropped off early at the elementary school, like significantly early, and it was still challenging to pick kids up and get them to high school on time. So by combining that into one route, we'll not only save money, but we'll drop the elementary school students off at a reasonable time, still have time to get the middle and high school kids to school together. And it ends up being a good thing for schools and the kids in the district. I think it's a win-win. And then we're proposing the implementation of 3 furlough days. As you know, the employee groups have already ratified those, and then we'll bring them to the board this evening. Couple other considerations. We also set aside funding. It's difficult to stand here in the middle of reductions and talk about an addition of staff, but we are operating at low levels in the fiscal department, and our consultants certainly recommended we add a fiscal staff, so we set aside to add a fiscal staff. We also have a sick leave payout at retirement that is part of our contractual obligation. It's an incentive for people to not call in sick and to save up their sick days over the time that they're here, and then they receive some compensation in retirement for that. We just wanted to make sure we were covered with that and didn't get surprised, so we built in a little bit of extra there. Felt that was worth knowing. And then the financial summary, and I do want to spend a little bit of time on this so I'll walk through it and then I'll explain why it looks different than 2.2. Well, I'll explain that first, actually, because I think people will go there first. Some of these reductions were taken prior to the October 12th board meeting where we announced $2.2 million in additional reductions. Some of them came through attrition beforehand, where we just didn't rehire people. So we had to cut 2.2 after that. And so that total is 2.5. So there's nothing changing here. We just made some reductions beforehand and wanted to capture it because if some of those positions were lost, we wanted them all encapsulated in the presentation. So that's what's happening with that. So when you look at it that way, the above the line cuts, which I would say everything but furlough days, you can see we took just over $1 million in staffing reductions or FTE reductions. We're able to get a significant amount in discretionary spending reductions. And then $600,000 in furlough days. That's roughly the average of 3 days. Some days earn us a little bit more because they're full instructional days with everybody working. Some days like conference days, we have fewer staff working. And so when you add all that together, it brings us to about $2.5 million in total we reduced, and 2.2 of those after the board meeting in October. Any questions about that? Wanted to be clear and transparent in this slide, so that's why it's all included there.
I think transparency is definitely appreciated. Thank you. I have no questions other than to say I think that a lot of care and thought went into this. And while I agree that I don't want to minimize the cuts that are happening because certainly those deserve attention, and it's extremely unfortunate and heartbreaking. I also think that the end result of what is presented here is a much better scenario than what anybody had in mind. And I think that, again, notwithstanding recognizing the cuts that were made, that I'm very appreciative of you, and I'm sure the community is too, all the work that went into this, because this, I know I was expecting a much worse outcome. And this is just showing the hard work and diligence that went into this decision making. So thank you.
Our administrators did a fantastic job of really digging in and being really creative and finding money. And I was very impressed and appreciative, and the collaborative effort was really good. So thank you for that. Other questions?
Yeah, I apologize for not getting this question to you in advance. And if you don't know this number right off the top, that's fine. But some of these reductions, at least 600,000 is coming through a negotiated process with our associations, and they're not, some of these cuts may be sustainable over time, that they are not a cost that will recur into next year and may be able to help. There are other costs that certainly the contractual ones, the return of this year's tuition reimbursement money and the return of the furlough days and perhaps others will return next year. Do we have a sense of how much of this will exist in 23, 24, where we're going to have to make another set of reductions? I just kind of want to give the community a sense of how much of this is able to be or potentially permanent versus those that we're going to have to go again in 23, 24.
It's a good question and a tough number to calculate. Sure. So the personnel reductions or the FTE reductions, those in theory should be sustainable, as little as I want to say that, but those are structural reorganizational changes. And they'll actually account for far more money than this year because it will be a full school year and we won't have to take any account for unemployment and other costs that come on the back side of that, which we did. And we built those into our cost savings. And so those may not be double what they are there in a dollar value, but maybe approaching that. And maybe probably less than that. I don't want to make that statement, but more than $1 million by a substantial margin. Some of the discretionary spending is probably sustainable, but how long can you go without providing professional development to your staff and doing important work? And some of the things around placement for students, some of that is dictated based on who shows up at our doorstep in certain years. And so some of that may be sustainable, some of it may not. So we'll do some further analysis of that. But that's kind of a vague answer to your question, but that's the most I know at this time.
That's very helpful. I just, more than anything want to be, and I don't want to suggest sustainable, because each and every one of these cuts, even, you know, the very smallest of an IA cut, that is access to assistance for students who clearly need that. It's not like this was just randomly available. So each of these cuts has an impact. I just also want to be not a surprise to the community that not all of these are permanent, either by contract or by necessity. These are really tough decisions for this year, and that there are a substantial number of these that we're going to have to wrestle with again as we put a budget together this spring for next fall.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, that there are a lot of these that are not sustainable. And just to be clear and transparent, that there are also one-time funds we use to get to the 2.2 number that truly are not sustainable. That those are reserves that are gone and burned through, and we'll need to replenish those also. And it's in addition to that, our grants were able to support a fair number of positions this year where we had some carryover from last year. And so we put those FTE into that grant, and they're going to have to come back out of there next year, which will put additional pressures. And there's a sizable amount of money. Our ESSER funds, for example, will be gone completely, and that's going to support about $300,000 and at least a couple $100,000 in other grants in sort of one time. So not just to be transparent about what it looks like, there's some one-time funds there that we're going to have to work around. At the same time, we'll have a much longer planning horizon, and a lot of these reductions will have more of an impact over the course of a year. So that's sort of the big picture analysis.
Just a brief, and it's less with budget, but of the positions that were cut or personnel who were cut, my understanding is that there was going to be some efforts with neighboring districts and to try to place them or to make coordination with them. What efforts, or is this an ongoing process? Is there are these people being taken care of, so to speak? What can we do with that?
Sure. The answer is yes, but I'll pass it off to the person actually doing the work.
Yeah, that is a really good question. We've already been working with surrounding districts. We want to have permission from the staff who are losing their jobs before we just give their names to other districts. But I've already been in conversation with Beaverton and Forest Grove and some other districts who I know have some open positions, letting them know that we have some really good people who will be looking for work. So, and we'll continue to do that. I really would like to start too, just by thanking our administrative team and at the district office and in buildings and SEA and OSEA, and just for the collaborative work to get to this place. As Gary said, people really rolled up their sleeves and dug in and became creative, trying to preserve as many jobs as we could. In the end, although there are 2 pages of people that we had conversations with, there were 3 people who chose to resign, and there were 4 people who ended up being laid off. And so when you consider all that could have happened, and I don't mean to minimize that, because those were gut-wrenching conversations, and we will work really hard again to try to help them find jobs. But we felt good about the fact that because of a lot of really creative work by our team, we were able to get to that place. So I also just want to thank our unions. We've talked about our relationship with SEA and OSEA for years, and they continue to partner with us in ways, they're just really all about kids. And so they try to not only protect the people within their membership, but they keep kids' best interest in mind. And it's the thing that I think I've loved the most about this community during the 17 years I've been here. So I'll talk a little bit first about furlough days. So we did work with SEA and OSEA and our leadership to identify some days that we thought would be we hoped would be the least impactful on kids, and at the same time, give us the opportunity to preserve our instructional hours so that we meet Division 22 requirements for instructional hours. So we looked first of all at days are really high in absenteeism for students and staff. And that was not hard to identify because we do know that people in Sherwood fly out on Friday before spring break because they get better rates. And we have really high absenteeism on that day for both students and staff, and we end up with a lot of subs. So that was kind of a unanimous first choice. Let's look at that Friday, March 24th before spring break. So for those of you who are listening out there, if you're planning your trip, you truly can plan to fly on Friday. The other 2 days, now to make that work, though I'll talk a little bit more about that. The other 2 days are June 15th and 16th. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about these one at a time. The other thing about this to make this work and to keep our trimesters balanced is we needed to move the end of trimester 2 from March 16th to March 10th. And then the staff work day from March 17th, which is a Friday currently on the calendar, to Monday, March 13th. And it's important for the community to know that because I know people plan 3-day weekends when their kids have a day off and they have a 3-day weekend. So if you had already been planning that 3-day weekend to go snow skiing or do whatever you do, looks like we may still have snow in March, then it's important to know that it'll happen the week before the weekend that you had originally planned. June 15th and 16th are the very end of the school year. And so what we are looking at here to make this work and to make sure that we keep enough instructional hours is we're canceling spring conferences at all 3 levels. In those what were conference days on the calendar will become instructional days, student contact days. Kids will be in school on those days. And then we're moving the last day of school from June 15th to June 13th. And then we're moving the staff work day from the 16th to the 14th. The 2 furlough days will fall then at the very end of the year. It does allow us to preserve instructional hours for seniors, and we continue to meet ODE instructional hour requirements for all of our kids. One question that continues to come up is what happens if we have inclement weather days and we have school closure? And so one of the things that we talked to both SEA and OSE about was in the event that we would have inclement weather, we could use the identified furlough dates as our weather makeup dates. So if we had, let's say we missed 3 days in January because we have a lot of snow, those could become our furlough days, and then we could make up the furlough days on the days that we've identified on the calendar as furlough days. Do you have any questions about that before I start talking about the layoff process? Because I know that there are also a lot of questions about how a layoff process works in a school district. If you work in the private sector, it's very, very different. We follow a procedure that is outlined in both of our contracts, and then we also follow Oregon revised statute. So, question.
Real quick, can you back up to that calendar? Because I did notice in the board packet, back up one more for me. Okay, so I just want everyone to take note of this on the calendar that was presented in the board packet. Let's start with the teacher workday that's going to the 17th to the 13th. It says the 13th on the actual calendar, but in the right side, it's still listed as the 17th.
Thank you. We'll
So we
correct
need to
that.
Make that correction.
Okay.
And then there was another one.
The second trimester, it's correctly logged on the calendar, but again, in the text, it's listed still as March 16th. So it needs to be switched to March 10th.
Thank you. We'll correct
There's
those.
no confusion when this gets, if it gets adopted and published. And then will you go to the next one real quick? I just want to double check since we.
While you're doing that, I think so. The thing I want to check and just make sure that we're able to communicate tonight, that assuming this passes tonight, that we'll update this and get it published on the school district website and out through principal emails and all of that as quickly as possible so that folks know that.
That'll happen this week.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Just to add to that, we have a district updates newsletter going out tomorrow and it will be posted there if it's approved tonight.
I think as many ways and that we can do this, I think the better, just because it is a calendar change mid-year.
Okay, so moving to the layoff process. So just to let you know a little bit about what ORS, the Oregon Revised Statute 342934 says, which then mirrors our contract language. When we have to lay off employees, we look for the following criteria to determine kind of how that's going to work. So the first one is licensure. People have to be, and this is for our certified staff, our teachers, our licensed staff. People have to be licensed for what they teach. They have to be licensed for what they do. So that's the very first thing. We can't just decide to move people wherever we want to move them. It doesn't work that way. Then we look at seniority. We keep a seniority list based on first date of service. And then we look at competence, and that's defined as either recent experience or educational attainment. Employees who are laid off in our contracts have recall rights for 27 months, and we keep a list of who those people are, and we contact them if something comes open that they would be eligible to come back to. Administrators are the same. The ORS, even though it speaks of teachers, really is referring to all licensed staff. And so we look at this as well. So one example would be a district office position that was eliminated, and the person who was in that position is a licensed administrator and was able to move into a position where we had a temporary administrator. And so that would be an example of how that would work, looking at licensure and then seniority, because if you're in a temporary position, you're not covered by contracts or by the ORS. This one, our classified staff it's a little bit messier. So they are not covered by an Oregon Revised Statute. There is contract language. And so this can be layers of conversations. And the way it looks is that we have 9 different job classifications within our classified ranks. We look at seniority within a classification. Then we look at qualification for the position duties. And then if we have a tie, we look at personnel evaluations. We, to my knowledge, never had to go there. However, we do have that in the contract. And then the way what we call the bumping process can look like is that if somebody has seniority over another person within their classification and their position is reduced, they can bump somebody with less seniority as long as they're not bumping into a higher paying position. So they can't bump into a position with more hours. They can't bump into a position that pays more, but they can bump into a position like theirs if they're bumping somebody with less seniority. In the end, after we went through layers of these conversations and people exercised their right to bump, again, we ended up with really a fairly small number of people who either chose to resign or who were laid off. And so I have to say, least favorite part of my job I have ever done, but people have been so gracious, so understanding, and our hope, we did have to lay off some really great people, and our hope is to be able to bring them back within the next 27 months if possible. I will say too, I know Gary talked a little bit about when he was talking about the different positions that were reduced. If you're out there and you're a lunch duty person, please don't panic. The lunch duty position that Gary talked about was through attrition. So I haven't talked to any lunch duty people, but none of you are being laid off. What questions do you have?
I don't so much have a question as just a comment that, I know these conversations were really difficult, and I know that this whole time we've talked about how to make the least impact on students and moving students and changing teachers. And those are big moves, and it's a major impact. However, I look at like all the little mental health pieces and the support pieces, and I'm like, that is also an impact, right? I mean, we all know that. So I just want to be really mindful. I know we're not looking at a better scenario as of right now next year, but as we grow to be more secure financially, I want to make sure that we aren't first thinking of what we can add and not going back to this list first and saying, what did we lose? Because I know that as a community, we were pretty loud about wanting to add mental health support and that being a real need for us. And even going back to your chart, that was like the biggest feedback. And so that's something the community wants to see in our schools, you know, and I know our kids need it. It's obviously not an ideal time to be removing any of those pieces. So I just want to be mindful of that as we proceed, that we look to hopefully pick those pieces back up.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Let me close on one last point, and that is that you as board members were thrust into something that was very irregular in regards to a normal board role. Typically, there would be much more work sessions and interface with board, gauging your responsibility as for community input and that kind of thing. But we really were not in that position this time around. So I just want to thank you for your level of trust and appreciation for the administrative team of this district and the collective bargaining associations to do the heavy lift here. And you stood by and were very supportive. So thank you for that.
Thank you, guys. All right. We will go into the action items of this evening. And with that, we will start with Mr. Emmer. Oh, he's right there still. Queued up and ready to go.
I saw that coming.
You were clearly looking ahead.
So just a little bit ago, district leadership presented information to the board on reductions identified as part of the current targeted $2.2 million spending reduction. Tonight, district leadership recommends the spending reduction plan strategies presented during the information and discussion and asks the board to adopt the plan strategies as presented.
Madam Chair. I would like to move to approve the personnel changes resulting from the reduction in force as provided to the board via handout.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those, oh,
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm just gonna say, again, I really, this is a difficult process. And I want to just reiterate for everyone that's impacted and for the colleagues that are going to have to pack up additional duties because of these changes. I just want to acknowledge that we see that, we feel that, and we are grateful that we have so much collaboration and cooperation in this district, that are the associations have been arm in arm in how do we do this in a way that has the minimal impact on kids that we can achieve. And recognizing that for every staff member out there that's going to be impacted by these furlough days, I'm sorry and thank you.
absolutely. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to adopt the revised 2022-2023 academic calendar reflecting proposed staff furlough dates of March 24th, June 15th, and June 16th, 2023, as well as all additional calendar adjustments as presented in information discussion item 7D, with the adjustments also made during our presentation.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks for your guys' help in all this. All right, we will move on to the OSBA policy updates for our first read. And Dr. Lyon, you get the fun in that.
Okay, we're going to move quickly through this. This is a first read of a stack of policies that are part of the the process that OSBA uses to make sure that all school district policies are aligned with legislative actions, rules, laws, and that kind of thing. So we're trying to do a first read of policy here of an enormous amount of policies. And we've got a slide deck that shows and goes through those that are required, those that are recommended, and those that are optional. So let's start and we'll go fairly quickly with this. And you'll be able to read and make notes on the changes from the time this meeting ends to next board meeting, the second read. So the following policies are required updates that have been vetted by our administrative team, looked over and checked off on. All of them have been. These are the required policies. Next slide, please. Discrimination complaint procedure. You can see there, it's got two language changes and clarifications. And again, these are required. Every student belongs. The bias incident complaint procedure includes language changes consistent with House Bill 2697. Disclosure of information is deleted on the next one. Personnel records are updated. OSBA decided to combine and adopt some language changes. GCDA, the AR, the criminal records check and fingerprinting, those are just simply language changes all required. Next slide, please. Special education, individualized education program is simply language changes and in compliance with the law. The talent and gifted policies, they are related to revising some of the ARs and then rule changes that have been passed by the state related to the TAG programs, reducing the policies and the administrative regulations and merging a number of those items that you'll see in those required draft policies. Next slide. Interscholastic activities, language changes that moves optional to required on one feature in that policy. Academic achievement is also language, and then the use of restraint or seclusion, very strict language there. And they clarify and update some language reflecting the legal prohibitions related to the use of seclusion cells. Next slide, please. Highly recommended. These are highly recommended in response to legal requirements or court decisions, not necessarily required for adoption, but OSBA strongly suggests that school districts in Oregon should adopt these policies to provide clarity around compliance with legal requirements. So highly recommended policies on the first read include a language about the superintendent's contract, passage of Senate Bill 1521 that basically says that a board cannot ask a superintendent to do something illegally, that is illegal. Budget committee, it requires school districts to establish an educational equity advisory committee, and it defines the budget committee member role on that committee. Bidding requirements aligns with the law, and early return to work also aligns to changes with Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidance. Those are highly recommended. Next slide. Also, expanded options program, language change that reflects some statutory language. The district improvement program, which is an ODE requirement every 4 years, I believe. And these are some language changes. And then the compulsory attendance notice and citations are simply language changes as well. Highly recommended. Next slide. Public records, language changes to better align with statute. No substantive changes, simply clarity is provided. Okay, and then optional. These are ones that you can treat as optional. We have put forth those that we believe are in the best interest of the school district to adopt, and they provide best practice related to law or areas of guidance for administration. So on the optional first reads this month, we have board member qualifications, We have standards for competent and ethical performance of Oregon educators. And then we have instructional assistant language that reflects current language found in Oregon statute and rules. All fairly minor, nothing really substantive there that changes any of that. Simply improvements on language. Questions? First read, give it a shot, look at them, give us feedback, and we will answer any questions you have, any suggestions for improvements, and we'll bring that batch back next month for a second read and adoption, potentially. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Our next item of business is to appoint 2 new budget committee members. You guys should all have ballots in front of you. You have a couple in case of a tiebreaker. So at this time, just go ahead and fill out the 2 that you would nominate for those 2 seats. And then feel free to hand them down to me. And I will tabulate them. Give me just 1 second. You want me to read these aloud? Okay. All right, our 2 new budget committee members are Tina Brannon and Derek Thomas. Tina with 4 votes and Derek Thomas with 5 votes. Christine, is that sufficient for everything you need? Okay. Congratulations. And thanks for joining the budget committee. We need you.
Chair Hawkins, similar to what we did last month with the board vacancy, do we need to do a motion just to affirm that ballot vote?
I think
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You don't need to, but it doesn't hurt. Sure, Madam Chair, I move that we appoint Tina Brannon and Derek Thomas to the Sherwood School District Budget Committee.
Thank you for doing that. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Wonderful. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. All right, our last item of business before we do our final public comments is to really see if there's a motion to adopt the proposed superintendent appointment standards and criteria.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the standards, criteria, policy directives as presented in this meeting to be applicable to the hiring of the Sherwood School District Superintendent position, and that the board appoint Director Hawkins to handle contract negotiations with current interim superintendent, Dr. Jeremy Lyon, to fulfill this position and bring forth a contract to the board for adoption at the December board meeting.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? 0. Motion carries 5-0. And as always, we still are happy to hear from the community. So please know that your response and feedback is welcome to us during this entire next month. Okay, this is our final section of the night. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Now we will address public comment that is not pertaining to the agenda. I believe we have 9 comments tonight, 5 in person and 4 electronically. So I will invite our first in-person person up first, Lindsay Broderick. You may join us up here. You have 3 minutes. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Yay. Okay, thank you, board. And first of all, I just wanted to say, you guys, you're all doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much. The public is very grateful for the work of our administrators and of our board. Very, very grateful in these very hard times. Thankful for the presentations tonight to help us to understand more of what's going on and how we as a public can be of more assistance. One thing that was of note to me was, as has been talked about in the past, the lower attendance, not attendance, I'm sorry, number of students that we have in our district, and how we could possibly gain some of those back as we're in this tough position. I'm kind of a forward thinker, and I want to look to see how we can gain some of those people back. As was shared tonight by Ms. Salm, that of the 3rd grade reading. And that year, my son was a third grader. And last month, my son was the one that was up here sharing his thoughts. And I wonder if in that, and he's one that we have struggled with in reading. We have tried really, really hard. I've been up here and talked so many times and how to help him to continue to learn to love to read. And I see, I haven't seen a lot of action. And so I hope tonight, as I ask you this, that you will consider, maybe, I don't know, district, this is more you than the board. I really, really, really want to see a committee formed to review our literature. Is this literature engaging to our students? Is that one of the problems that we have with some of our numbers? Not just necessarily COVID, but do kids want to read? I've talked to kids, I substitute for the district. I've talked to kids all over the place in this district. Kids don't like the books, guys. It's not hard. They don't like this selection. They're not engaged in what they're reading. That is the problem. I want to see a committee formed that will review our literature that we have. I want to see a board member on this committee because the board represents this public. And I want to see them helping to find literature that our students will actually want to read. My son hated the book that was read in class. It talks too much about emotions and how sad, it's depressing. He's in 4th grade, guys. This was ridiculous. And I hear this from grades all across the board, all the way up through high school. I was subjected to Hemingway. Yes, I hated it. However, when they're in 3rd and 4th grade, they should not be subjected to that much crying and whining and depressing things in life. They should be happy and exciting and reading about adventures or things that engage them. So please, please, I know you have a lot to do. I completely understand. I'm not trying to add you more to your workload, but let's fix the reading books and see if we can get better test scores. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Taryn Butterfield, Sherwood. I'm a Sherwood resident who has chosen to send all my kids to a private school and to not participate in the Sherwood public school system. We made this decision in 2021 after we saw how the Sherwood School District was handling the COVID pandemic. It was apparent at the time that the public school system was basing their decisions to have online schooling versus in-person classes off of fear, not scientific evidence, and fear of financial retribution from the state. The Sherwood schools were being politicized instead of putting the well-being of our children first. It is obvious that my child would be a pawn in a political chess game that we have no desire to be a part of. The sentiment that I get from Sherwood School District is that my say as a parent in my child's education does not matter. Political issues are being pushed onto our kids, and there's a lot of catering to a very small select few, while the vast majority of the student population is overlooked. I do not believe in the sex education, gender identification approach in the public school system. I don't want my kid to come home from school confused about their gender because some teacher asked what gender they identify as. I don't want to see my daughter sharing a locker room or restroom with any biological male, period, regardless of how they identify. I don't want my kids to think it's acceptable to meow and bark at teachers, adults, and peers. A counselor in Sherwood School District told me how the teachers can't challenge the identification of a furry. We have friends that work in the Sherwood School District but send their own children to private school because they see the glaring issues surrounding the Sherwood schools for themselves. I recently spoke with a high school student that transferred from Sherwood High School to a private school, and I asked what their experience was between the two. They said that they felt like the teachers at Sherwood High School were babysitters who punched a time clock and didn't truly care about their individual education. The teachers at their private school made a conscious effort to understand the students' educational needs and showed a genuine interest in their success inside and outside of the classroom. As lifelong Sherwood residents, our family has paid into the Sherwood education system tenfold, and it is extremely disheartening that our tax dollars won't be put to use for our own children.
Rachel Cox. If you could understand what I just said. The podium is yours. Thank you.
I am a first grade teacher at Hawksview, and I normally would not be here, but I felt the need to speak tonight because of a board member who decided to use his platform to single me out in front of the same audience during the last board meeting, and I would like to share my own story with you all. I am biracial. Growing up, I was one of very few students of color at my school, and I found people like myself very underrepresented in the school system. I did not see people like me in the posters and art hanging on the walls, in the books that we read in class, or in the teachers that I had. There were white faces everywhere. I did not have a teacher of color until I went to college. There was one Black student in my entire middle school, and I remember wondering why some of my peers were afraid to let him touch them because of the color of his skin. I wondered why no one ever thought to find books that included biracial families like mine during my entire elementary education. I wondered why I walked into an AP class in high school and was asked if I was sure I was in the right class in front of my peers. I wondered why people were afraid to acknowledge and talk about race. I became a teacher not to distract students with politics, but to show students that they are valued and loved and beautiful exactly as they are, and that they matter. My job is the part of me that I'm the most proud of because I know I have the opportunity to teach students how much their character matters, how the words they use and the way they treat others matters, that no matter what family dynamic they come from, the color of their skin, their socioeconomic status, or any aspect of their home life, they matter to me. I can make sure for the 7 hours a day that they're at school, they are important and valued and loved. Part of that for me is making sure they feel represented in my classroom, to have books that feature characters of different races and represent different family dynamics, to show them that if you have 2 moms or 2 dads or 1 parent or live with your grandparents or have skin or hair that looks different than your peers, these parts of you do not make you different or less than or a victim. They are parts of who you are, and they make you beautiful and special and unique. It is for that reason that I had a Black Lives Matter poster on my wall, not because I believe in all of the radical politics of the BLM group, but because I believe that for a long time in our country, Black people have been treated as if their lives matter less than others, when really their lives should matter just as much as anyone else's. I am disappointed in the school board member who had the audacity to call that out in front of the entire district, having done zero research on who I am as a teacher in this district by speaking to families, students, or other staff members at my school. I expect more from a man in a position of power than to use their platform to slander a young female teacher of color, knowing that no one would have the opportunity to refute remarks made in his speech. I expect more than for people to think that all teachers should do is teach reading, writing, math, art, athletics, and science. I have students who come to school every day who need targeted practice with coping skills and social emotional skills to deal with the trauma they face in their everyday life. Students who need to practice and talk through strategies on how to calm down when they're angry because they live in a constant state of anger. School is so much more than reading, writing, math, art, science, and athletics, and to think that is all it is a very privileged opinion.
That's time.
Thank you all for listening.
I'm gonna have to ask you guys to hold your applause. Okay, just so that we make sure rules are the same for everybody in this room. What? We do applaud for kids often in here, but we try to only do that for students or things that we're celebrating at like a spotlight on, because we ask everybody to do that. But thank you.
Michelle Nedwick, Sherwood. We had the best possible first grade experience last year. My youngest daughter had an exceptionally great first grade teacher, Miss Cox. From the first day of school, my daughter felt so welcome and included in her classroom and felt like she belonged. Every day she would come home from school telling me how much she loved her teacher and couldn't wait to get back to school the next morning. She went on and on about how cozy and safe she felt in her classroom. It was the fall of 2021, so I had not gotten to go inside the school or see her classroom yet at that point. Finally, later on in the school year, I was approved as a volunteer and got to go inside their first grade classroom. I saw exactly what my daughter was speaking about. It was so beautiful and calming and welcoming inside her classroom. From the seating arrangements to the lighting to the special reading loft and calming area to the inclusive signs to the side showing that all students and families are welcome. And finally, a special mirror with affirmations around it to encourage the children. It was such a calming and beautiful setting that I didn't want to leave. I could see what my daughter meant by wanting to stay longer in first grade and not being ready to leave at 2:15. The beautiful and welcoming classroom is a reflection of Miss Cox and her kind and caring heart. It is very clear to me that she wants every child to feel welcomed and seen and feel that they belong. She made my daughter feel like she was special and cherished. while at the same time making every student in the class all feel the exact same way. Ms. Cox personalized my child's learning plan and sent me updates online about my child testing and passing all of her first grade reading into early second grade reading level, and then completing second grade reading level by the end of first grade. My child absolutely thrived having Ms. Cox as her teacher. My child is also having a great second grade experience this year, and she still hugs Ms. Cox goodbye after school every day as we walk home from school. About 5 or 6 of the kids run up for hugs as they go home each day, and it's evident they all felt welcomed and included and cared for by her. She's been a huge blessing to her entire class last year, as I'm sure she is for her whole class this year.
All right, Julie, is it Julie Loffer? The podium is yours.
My name is Julie Loffer, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Sherwood School District and wanted to come speak here tonight after hearing some of the comments that were made by a school board member last month regarding a teacher in her classroom. The #1 goal of any teacher is to educate their students. I think that's a given. But in order to effectively teach and educate their students, a teacher must also create an environment that allows their students to feel safe, included, and welcomed. My son was a student last year of the teacher that the board member referenced. It was a first grade classroom, and it was the first year of full-time school post-COVID, meaning that he had attended kindergarten primarily online. I think we can all agree that attending kindergarten virtually isn't ideal. Therefore, the first grade teachers of those incoming students had an even stronger headwind than they would most years. What I can say from personal experience is that my son thrived in the environment and community that his teacher created. He came home excited from his day of school, and even more importantly, he was excited to go to school each morning. He was excited to be learning new things and making new friends. In the second half of the year, I vividly remember scrolling through the latest updates in his Seesaw account and coming across a picture of him holding up a card with one of the biggest smiles that I have ever seen on that boy. The sign read that he had just jumped 2 levels in his reading. He was so proud. I was so proud. And I knew his teacher was proud too, because she took the time to make the sign and have him hold it up and take a picture. But what that proves is not only what amazing teacher he had and her skill set at learning the fundamentals of reading and writing and math, but it spoke to her ability to create an environment that allowed him to learn those things with such success. We must trust our educators to not only teach our kids, but create classrooms where the kids feel safe, included, and welcomed so that they can thrive. That is exactly what his teacher did, and I can't thank her enough. Being in her class set him up for success for the years to come. I am forever grateful that he had such a compassionate, dedicated, and talented teacher. Thank you for your time.
Ashley Lower, Sherwood. Hello, my daughter was in Rachel Cox's class last year for first grade. She had the best experience and time with her. She always wished she could stay longer at school so she could be with Miss Cox. She helped build her confidence academically and helped her grow as a student. My daughter had so much respect for her and still does to this day. Every chance she gets, she goes out of her way to go say hi and give her a hug. My kindergartner has even been asking if she gets to be in Miss Cox's class since last summer, because she made her feel special by knowing her name and talking to her after school. I was fortunate enough to be able to volunteer on a couple of field trips last year. It was so nice to be able to see Miss Cox interact with her students and see how all of the students generally loved being in her class. Miss Cox is kind, compassionate, fun, and engaged. I love how diverse her classroom was and that she made it clear that each and every student was in the right place, that each student belonged, and that she taught respect between students and peers. I felt like we won the lottery being in her class, and I hope my two younger children have the opportunity to be in her class as well. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Mercy Newsom.
Good evening, everyone. I wish I was here under happier circumstances. I'm going to discuss some negative stuff, but I really love the Sherwood School District. I'm going to comment on the remarks made by Duncan, your former board member. I've been thinking a lot this week about it. A lot. I'm not going to cry. I'm trying not to cry. I took this as a slap in the face to my daughter because Duncan knows who my daughter is. She's friends with his daughter. I haven't ever met him, but I am extremely offended and would like to offer my phone number to him or his father to call and contact me or my family member, specifically my husband, who is an African immigrant, who has an accent. He's also a combat vet. He was in the Army. He's lived in Europe. He's lived in Africa. He lived in the Middle East, of course, unfortunately. And here in America, we have had problems with racism. I was first married to a white man. My two oldest children are white. And my life is completely different. Nothing about my life is the same as being married to a white man. Nothing. And for him to say that there's no racism in Tualatin is a joke. We had a legit hate crime. I know there's law enforcement, so I hate to admit to not reporting a crime, but racism is real and it is here. It is right here. I'm available to talk. I won't go into the details now. Miss Cox is amazing. I do not want to see any kind of blowback, any kind of negative, anything happen to her. She has been phenomenal. I had a difficult time adjusting here. Last year, there was a lot of death in my family. My mother died. She was there for me. She was there for Vivian. She was in contact with me every day, making sure Vivian's health was all right. Her emotional health, everything. I'm running out of time. I'm so sorry. But I just don't, I hope that he didn't have an impact on any of you. I hope you don't share his views because I've had nothing but wonderful people at this school district until I saw that horrible video on YouTube that thousands of people saw, and his comments about us wanting to teach our kids to hate police. That's so sick. That's wrong. They deserve protection. They admire the police. It's just so wrong. Everything he said, the way he brought about that visual with Africans, bringing out a negative stereotype about Africans. It's hard enough being, there's less than 2% of Oregon is Black of the population. So it's hard enough to walk amongst people that don't sound like you or look like you without having that on a school board. There's no place where it, since when was inclusion and kindness wrong?
That's time.
Thank you.
Julie Casterline, Orem Pinson, Sherwood. Hi, we are parents of two former students of Miss Cox, virtually and in person. Both of our children had a wonderful experience with Miss Cox. She is an outstanding teacher. She always goes out of her way and makes you feel very welcome. When our older son had her as a teacher during COVID, she motivated him through virtual learning. She really makes a huge impact with her teaching and just her presence. She's such a good person. She has a very good heart, and I would like to comment about her classroom. Her classroom was one of my favorite classrooms during conferences. Everything in there speaks of what is going on today. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, but we all know in her classroom, we can all come together as a family, and that's what all students need to experience, to know that their teacher and their school is a safe place to be at. And she really means a lot to many people and to my kids. I would like for her to know that I appreciate everything she has done for my kids and for the community, and I hope she continues to make a huge impact on our future students like she has to our children.
Thank you. Heidi Van, is it Brock? Sorry, the podium is yours.
Good evening. My name is Heidi. I'm a parent of a child that attends Hawksview. Last year was our first year in the public school system, and we came in with some reservations since we were still in a pandemic, as well as not knowing how inclusive the learning environment was going to be. These concerns dissipated quickly because of the love, care, and support Ms. Cox provided from day one. What I'm going to share with you next comes from my own experience of having a child in her class the entire year, volunteering in the classroom, getting to know her as a teacher, and talking to other parents that had her. I first want to begin by saying Ms. Cox is the absolute bee's knees when it comes to being a teacher and an awesome human. What makes her the bee's knees, you may ask? Well, it's because she creates a learning environment for our children that is full of love, a sense of safety to be yourself, it's inclusive, and students and families feel a true sense of belonging, regardless of skin color, family structure, religious background, socioeconomic status, etc. The signage in her classroom and in numerous spaces at Hawksview was an indication to my family that she and other educators recognize that systemic racism exists, that they acknowledge that diverse family structures exist, and that they are true allies for all students and their families. Ms. Cox embraces everyone. I mean, isn't that what we want for our kids, for each other? Personally, because of this nurturing environment, my child thrived in his academic learning and with learning important life skills such as how to navigate conflict and differences from other students in their classroom. My child was excited to go to school every day, and it was a fun place to be. He absolutely adored her from day one. So much so that when Ms. Cox would give her class a heads up on upcoming planned days off, he'd come home and say he was taking those days off too. We would chuckle and remind him that's not how it works, but good try. We have many stories like this, and so do other parents, and some of you've heard tonight. Because again, Ms. Cox is the bee's knees and an invaluable asset to the Sherwood School District. My family owes her so much and will be forever grateful. The last thing I want to say is actually a request. My request is that if a parent or a parent on this board sees something in a classroom that concerns you or you have questions about, please reach out to that educator, have a conversation, have a dialogue. Volunteer in the classroom so you can see what the dynamics are. Just don't base your assumptions off of a brief interaction such as supply night drop off that happened before the school year even started. Our teachers deserve better than this. And again, Ms. Cox, you're the bee's knees and we love you. Thank you for your time.
All right, that concludes our public comment section for the evening. We appreciate all of you guys sharing your feedback with us. And I know we can't comment, but we definitely appreciate hearing all of your feedback. The next meeting of the board will be held on December 7th, 2022. And for this evening, we are adjourned.